The number 5, movement and change of direction. The number 5, movement and change of direction. Okay, so the number 5 represents the movement and the change of direction. So the number 3 and number 5 could get misinterpreted when you're breaking it down, because when you break it down, change of movement, change of direction, and something being dramatic or having an emphasis on something could relate and could be similar in a way. So, and when you're breaking it down, when you want to look at it like the number 5, you want to look at it spiritually, physically, and less emotionally. You don't want to look at it emotionally. So physically, it represents the body. So like, you know how we got 5 fingers, we got 5 fingers, we got 5 toes, and we got 5 limbs in total, like legs, 2 arms, and a head. All right, so the fifth will always be the change in direction. So, you know, number 4 brings stability. We got 2 arms, 2 legs, but the 5 will be something completely different. That's the same thing that goes with our fingers. So we got 4 of these fingers on the same axis, and then we got a thumb on a different axis. Okay, so physically, it's kind of like transformation. Okay, so physically, number 5 brings transformation. Spiritually, in the Bible, grace, like when you say your grace, it's kind of like praying right before you eat. So when you pray right before you eat, you are granted God's grace. Okay, so God's grace is when He lends His power to you as you being a human being and endowing into God-like body and God's spirit and having the power of God. Right, so God's grace is when God grants you His power. So He gives the power to His children. All right. So for example, what am I getting at, right? So the movement, like the number 5 means movement. So the movement and a spiritual sense relating to number 5 can be looked at in the Bible when John wrote 5 books about the grace of God. Okay, he wrote 5 books about the grace of God and forever living as a soul. Okay, the 5 books was a symbol of movement, because in order for God to grant the grace, it has to be some type of change in direction. So in order for God to grant you the grace, it has to be from above to below. Okay, so that's the major change in direction. You know, you can't just get grace just out of nowhere, just at a random spot in the air. It has to be through God. So from above to below. So that's the change of direction. He wrote 5 books. Okay, and them 5 books said, look, it's about the grace of God. All right, so that literally was the direction he wanted to go. All right, so when you think of the number 5, think of major movements, like something that's completely different, like major movements that affect a mass area or like a group. You know, so say I came in with like 100 people. We came in with 100 people, and then, you know, we just bought everything in the store. Okay, you bought everything in the store. That's a major movement, you know? You see what I'm saying? Okay, so be prepared for something to be completely gone or to have a drastic change applied to it. Like something like drastically changing. So I could really go back on the Bible too. What I'm saying, like, what I'm saying, hey, can y'all stop talking on the glass for me? Yeah, I'm recording the video. My bad. So, like when Jesus took like 5 loaves of bread and he transformed 5 loaves of bread to feed 5,000 people, which is the size of a small city. So he took 5 loaves of bread and he transformed to. He took 5 loaves of bread and he transformed it to feed 5,000 people. It wasn't dramatic, like it wasn't symbolically of, you know, something like being dramatic like the number 3, but it was more so impactful. Okay, it was more so impactful because, you know, 5,000 people could have been dead. You know, they could have died from starvation, which happens a lot. So when Jesus actually took the 5 loaves of bread and he gave it to a city, he turned the 5 loaves of bread into 5,000. He didn't turn 5 loaves of bread to 5,000, but he made 5 loaves of bread feed 5,000 people. That was a drastic transformation, you see what I'm saying? So, when a change occurs, it has to occur in a physical and a spiritual form. It has to occur in a physical and a spiritual form, you see what I'm saying? So pay attention when the number 5 is in effect, because it can result in a effect of actual movement, like people actually moving or things actually moving, or like you can feel movement. It could be movement any type of way. So in a spiritual sense, you have the freedom to create and be adventurous because of your free will and the willpower of you being a human being. Okay, I want to break that down because I was looking on Google and then they were saying number 5 represent like adventure, like to have an adventure and to be free, like to have freedom and stuff like that. That's what number 5 was trying to like. They was trying to figure out like why does number 5 represent this? All right, so we are the only species with 5 solid limbs. So like every other species did not have 5 solid limbs. So we have the consciousness to move however we want to move. Okay? In our mind, body, and spirit, as human beings, we have free will and we have willpower. So we can do whatever we want to do as human beings. You see what I'm saying? And our consciousness is what makes us the 5th and the 6th level of our spirit. So of course we got 5 limbs, but our free will and our willpower gives us that superpower. You see what I'm saying? And that is the God's grace. So when you think about number 5, our free will is because of our exact image of God, right? So our exact image of God, we look exactly like God. Like we were made in the exact image of Him, right? So not only males but females have the same amount of limbs in their body. So you got the same amount of organs, same amount of bones, all that. But our ability that separates us from everybody else, that separates us from all of the animals, separates us from the plants, everything else on earth, is that we realize and we have a consciousness of God. We know who God is, right? So we're able to create movement and we're able to create change based upon our knowledge of God, based upon our knowledge of Him. All right. So we know exactly what to do, and we know exactly what not to do, right? So we're able to create change in heaven or hell depending on our decisions consciously. All right, so think about this. Adam and Eve was in a garden. They were made in the likeness of God, right? So the thing that made them human and separated them from everybody else was them having free will. Okay, so a lot of other things existed. Everything on earth existed, but human beings did not exist at all. So Adam and Eve were the first humans on earth. And what separated them from everything else was their free will. They had the option to do whatever they wanted to do. And that's what I'm trying to get at. The free will and the willpower still represents, is a symbolic representation of number 5, because it's creating movement and it's creating a change of direction in a good way or in a bad way. So, and it could be a tally mark in heaven, or it could be a tally mark in hell. You see what I'm saying? So that's why it's so important, because we have 5 limbs, all right? So we are the physical representation of God, okay? We are in the likeness of him, okay? So if we lay down on the floor and we spread out all of our limbs, like we put all of our limbs as wide as we can, we have a godlike angelic 5-point symbol that will in turn create movement, okay? So if we lay on the floor and spread out all of our limbs, we have an angelic 5-point symbol that resembles God, that will in turn create movement and change. Now it's up to you to, you know, take that 5 and do whatever you want to do with it, because when you think about 5, you know, 5 could be in any type of direction, any type of movement. All right, so that is why the number 5 represents change of direction, and the number 5 represents movement. All right, make sure y'all follow my YouTube, RJRockfilmz, and make sure y'all follow my Twitter. I'm definitely on Twitter, okay, RJRock. And make sure y'all listen to my music, okay, RJRock. On YouTube, it's okay, RJRock. All right, that's pretty much it. Peace.